LPT. If you want your cheese to last longer, don't touch it. Particularly for larger wedges or blocks of hard cheese that can last for several weeks to months. In the right conditions, avoid touching the parts you're not going to use immediately. When you touch the cheese, it introduces bacteria and other possible contaminants, and promotes spoiling sooner than it otherwise would have. Our hands naturally have oils and bacteria that can transfer to the cheese. 3 things. Hands. Try not to touch your cheese, and if you do, make sure your hands are very clean and very dry. Then place it in a Ziploc bag and Ziploc it almost all the way shut. Then roll it up and squeeze out as much of the air as possible, then finish sealing it. This has greatly extended the life of my cheese. Simple solution. Eat all the cheese. Washing your hands before touching prepping food helps, too. I have also heard this. Mum made us glove up when we were prepping large quantities for storage. If you want your cheese to last longer, don't eat it. Believe it or not, the same goes for light bulbs. The cheese touch. Not to be cheesy, but this is handy advice. Just vacuum seal it. Am I the only person who only touches cheese right before eating it? I'm disappointed by the lack of cheese touch jokes here. Why I leave mine in the wrapper while cutting. Keeps fingers off. I don't ever touch it. And I also wrap in a vinegar-dampened paper towel before putting it in the Ziploc. I also use water displacement to get as much air as possible out of the bag. FYI, it doesn't taste like vinegar. GIF Giphy CQT4 UZCAVE 11K downsized. You can also freeze it or parts of it. As a self-admitted cheese addict, I've found if I wrap it in a paper towel before putting it in a Ziploc, it lasts for weeks on end, without issues. I've tried the other methods mentioned and nothing works as well as just a paper towel. Cheese going bad is just a sign that you should be eating cheese more frequently and or larger amounts. Related LPT: don't double dip a spoon in the jam if it touches anything else, especially cheese. I couldn't figure out why my jam went bad so quick until I realized I needed better jam spoon. Hygiene. Wear gloves when handling cheese. Nasty ass fingerings all up on good cheese, face vomiting. This is true for dick cheese as well. Our cursed life pro tips. Correct. If you wash your hands with soap and water before touching the cheese, you will not contaminate it as much as if you just touched it without washing your hands. I buy pre-sliced cheese in those vacuum-sealed bags. They sometimes go bad in like 3 weeks without being opened. Is there a way to avoid it going bad when unopened? Luckily the store lets me exchange it for another one, but still. Same with jarred food like olives and pickles. The pickling juice or water these are stored in will grow mold on the top if you're sticking fingers in. Only use a clean fork. Yes, actually, even better to get the 100 individually wrapped slices. Ditto for Twinkies. Unopened, they last forever. Great tip: keeping cheese untouched helps maintain its quality and prolong its shelf life. Same goes for the bag of shredded cheese in your fridge. Use a spoon or pour some out. And try to remove the air before you reseal the bag. If your cheese blocks last more than a week to 10 days, you can keep it longer in the freezer. I just use gloves when I'm cutting, or if I'm shredding grating, only cut off what I'm using from the block. This is true of all food. Vacuum sealing is great to stop stinky cheese smelling in your fridge. Or put it in the freezer if it's block cheese. But it up into smaller pieces first. If it's grated, you can stick it into whatever you're cooking from frozen. It breaks up when frozen easily. Just eat it all before it has the chance to go bad. You don't kiss it goodnight? Same for bread. Only touch the slices you are going to eat and keep it closed with the original clasp if possible. And the extra baggage tucked underneath. We are Dutch, our cheese doesn't last long enough to spoil. This. And make sure to wash your hands good before handling it. If I am cutting up whole blocks of cheese, I wash the outer packaging first. Then my hands. Then remove the block onto a clean cutting surface. After it's stored in a clean container. Stays fresh for a long time. You can always tell when producers and deli staff don't use good cross-contamination prevention. Can't count the number of times when I've watched staff wearing the same gloves for hours to do food prep. All the food will spoil fast and it's gross to think about. One-word vacuum sealer. My problem is that I've eaten all the cheese, so none left to store spoil. How does anyone make a large block of cheese last more than a week without eating it all? Also, hard cheese doesn't go bad, really. Just cut off the rind. Soft cheese, not so much. If it's a hard cheese, you can also just cut the moldy part off and eat the rest. I guess I shouldn't take a bite out of a giant chunk of cheese and then put it back in the refrigerator. Is that a euphemism? Clean your hands before touching food XD. Oh, this is like a how to store a half-drunk bottle of wine tip. Just was never needed. Hard cheese only mold on the surface, so you can cut the part off. Fun fact. That. An European mutation to lactose tolerance. Is one Europeans dominated seafaring expansion. LPT. Wash your hands before handling food. 1. Wash your hands. 2. Leave the packaging intact and only cut off only as much as you want to eat. It won't hurt your knife. 3. Put the remainder in an airtight Ziploc. I usually get several months on hard cheeses because only the edge is exposed to contamination. Every time I cut a piece, it's a new uncontaminated edge. Worst case scenario and the edge starts going bad, I can trim it off. Yes, this is what I try to do. Also, wrap the cheese in its own tea. Cut the wrapper off as you cut the cheese. Leave it attached to the block and then wrap it back up before you put it in the fridge. The less air exposed it is, the less dried up it will be. Poly food gloves are neat. What if I want to add like random game genie codes to the flavor of my cheese by contaminating it with the microbes from the unwashed skin on my hands? I mean, what's even the point of life at that point? The cheese touch, literally. I literally just cut off the mold in fine slices. For some reason, tin foil seems to make it last longer. Plastic wrap always molds. And then there are people like me who take a bite directly out of the block and put it back in the fridge. Also store it with a piece of paper towel next to it. The tannins in the paper are naturally antibacterial. The block will last longer. Don't touch the cheese wedge. This is why I am wary of eating certain people's cooking. I've seen them stick their whole unwashed hand into the cheese bag. Knuckles and fingers rubbing up against everything. Same with pickles. Fingers straight into the brine. And they wonder why their food spoils fast. I take cheese I'm not going to use in the next week or two and put it in a Ziploc freezer bag. Then I'll take cheese out and let it sit in the fridge for a day or two to thaw before I use it. I usually buy 5-pound bags of shredded cheese and there's no way I'll be able to use all of that before it goes bad. Just wrap your cheese in a cheesecloth or paper towel dampened with white vinegar. And wrap that in plastic wrap. It will last as long as you need it to. Good to know. I'll stare at any cheese I buy and not eat.